Here they come.
Hey everybody, welcome. Thank you for coming to our presentation. What we're going to be talking about today is social metacognition. And so I'll start out with a little question for everybody. I don't care, you can get on mic, you can put it in chat. How many of you, and you could be a learning designer or you could be someone teaching an individual course, but how many of you are incorporating metacognition into assignments or discussions or anything like that? You can go ahead and type Y for yes or N for no, or you can even type in what exactly you're doing. And it's okay if you currently aren't doing anything with metacognition. But what our session today is, what we'll be talking about is, I know different people are using, reflection. Most people are doing metacognition through like reflections or journals and things like that. Well, the research that Chris and I have been working on is on social metacognition. So it's not the metacognition where it's a student just thinking about their learning, and thinking about what are the best strategies for me to learn, and how do I reflect on this, and how do I understand my learning. When we're talking about social metacognition, what we're doing is talking about how a group or a team or study partners uses the concept of metacognition, of knowing how they learn and how the other people they're associated with in a team or in a study group learn. So for example, if you divide your students into teams for projects, you might be having them do a bit of reflection at the end of it and going like, oh, what did you learn? What did the other students do? What part did you do? You might already be doing a little bit of that. Social metacognition, most of the research that's been done has been done like in teaching math and statistics, and how students learn when they're put into small groups to study say different problems and things like that. But we're going to be applying it to something different. So go ahead, Chris, next slide, and we will talk about the other difference. So what we'll be talking about is actually the Great Push. So Chris, if you go to the next slide.
I was typing in the chat.
Okay, so the Great Push is what we're going to be talking to you about, is an example of social metacognition that everyday people who gamers use, because this is one area, and you can also see it in different workplaces. This is an area where social metacognition, where you think about how you learn, you go back and look at how you're learning, and look at how your other team members are learning. All of this happens regularly in massively multiplayer online games. So to introduce who we are and why we care about this is we're co-guild masters of a guild in World of Warcraft called Inevitable Betrayal. And it offers a place for educators to explore games and other virtual world activities. I'm the assistant director of learning design at Front Range Community College, and I'm currently a doctoral student. So Chris, you're up.
Sure. My name is Chris Lukes. I am the Dean of Business Manufacturing at Community College of Denver, and I'm also a PhD student at Old Dominion University in Community College Leadership Program. And I've taught business accounting, graphic design for almost 2 decades. I've been a gamer most of my life, done a lot of research on game-based learning, as well as looking at how we can incorporate that into the classroom in the way that we teach and do. Along with Kay and other groups, we've written chapters and researched game-based learning, immersive environments, AR platforms, and ubiquitous learning, among other things. So thank you and welcome.
So what we're going to be giving you is an overview, and I'll just take it, Chris, because I
Okay.
started talking, my mouth opened and words came out. Okay. So here's what we'll be doing. We'll be giving you our research, but we will also be we will be giving you practitioner notes. Okay. So that when you go back and somebody goes, is this evidence-based? Is this research-based teaching? Is this evidence-based teaching? Why, yes, it is. Okay. So we did our welcome. We'll quickly go over research methods. We'll tell what we're talking about is an event. We'll be talking about an event, and it's called the Great Push. And it's an event in World of Warcraft with gamers. Then we'll be talking about the learning environment, and then the unique things about this learning environment. And then we'll be talking about the learning strategies employed and the learning theories observed. Now, these strategies and theories are absolutely things that happen or could happen in face-to-face and online classrooms. The other thing that we've been able to extrapolate is also for learning designers, because learning designers, some people work at home alone and never talk to anybody and just get things given to them on Word documents. But if you're like me at Front Range, I am constantly working with people. Constantly having to think about how my faculty will learn what I'm doing. Think about how students will be learning, and I'm constantly working in a team. In fact, the facilitator today, our moderator today, Mouse, is a member of my team. And if you want to know, do I have an idea about how he learns and how he functions in our learning team? I absolutely do. So we'll go ahead, and Chris, next slide. So we'll try and go fast. This was mixed methods, okay? So we're using both qualitative and quantitative. And Chris, just keep going. Okay, the research questions we studied, just because if you want to say that it's research-based. What we did with this, in a group that has to use social metacognition continually to be able to learn on the fly, what learning strategies did they use? Are there any significant differences in the different strategies from the different teams? Is there any significant difference in the strategies suggested versus completed? And was there any significant difference in team involvement on what the teams were doing? So you can take this into, you can start, conceptualizing this into, is it a group project with students, or is it a course development with learning designers and SMEs and educational technologists? Okay, so go, Chris.
Sure. The next piece here is looking at what does it mean for educators? So let's translate those research questions into what actual practical knowledge we're looking to capture. So whenever we're talking about this event and what we're noticing and what we're seeing these groups do, these are things you should keep in mind as educators. Is what are your students groups like? So think about how your students group work together. How are they constructing their learning to keep everyone on the same page? So no one's lagging behind and being detrimental to the team. How are they defining success as a group? What support are they needing? What other pieces are using? What tools are these groups using or found most useful that you're using? How does information flow both through formal and informal channels during the course of this process of this event? So those are things to keep in your mind as educators and looking at how it may be a practical application for what you do in your classes.
And like I said, we're going to let you extrapolate as we show you these things, but let's talk about social metacognition for learning designers. How does your course development team work together? What advantage, who has what advantages? how is learning being constructed to keep everyone on the same page? Meaning, are you bringing in a new technology that you have never used before? Are you educating your SMEs about it? Are your SMEs educating you? Which happens a lot when learning designers do course developments. You start to develop knowledge in the content areas. You know, how is the team defining success? And how are they defining success along the way? You want a course development at the end, but think of it again, just because of what I work with. If I am working with a team with a SME who is very experienced in working on a learning design team, the product we get is different than if it's the SME's first time and they don't know technology very well, and we have to coach them to understand ideas and concepts and pedagogies and stuff like that. Other things for here, if for social metacognition for learning design teams, are what tools can the group use? For example, you know, like, can you quickly get into Pressbooks and use HTML5? Can you use virtual worlds or a game engine? Based on the build, is the best that you can do is, you know, videos with captioning. And then again, how does information flow through both formal and informal channels? So social metacognition is also for learning designers leading a team, or if you're a manager of learning designers, which I am, I am constantly thinking about what assignments to give who. How can we do this as a team? How can the team all learn this new technology? For example, the whole team looked at AI and but then we specialized and reflected on what we were already learning. So this is a framework we want to give to you. And now we're gonna show you our research. And our research was in a specific environment, but keep thinking about how this social metacognition in teams, how you can use it either for your class or for your learning design work. So Crystal, go ahead and get started on it now.
All right, so we talked about it. So what is the Great Push? So the Great Push is part of a competition done by the game company Blizzard, and their product is World of Warcraft. And this is a subset of, so this is the competitive environment. So what's going on is there's 5 players per team. So that sounds familiar in the classroom. A lot of our classes use a 5-person team when we're breaking out students into groups. Competition was for a $20,000 prize pool, play-in qualifying tournament. There was a series of play-ins. Roughly, teams had 2 weeks to prepare for each competition. And so the competition lasted several days. So the learning environment that we used is they used the Shadowlands, which was a version of World of Warcraft. This is their 3rd season. So as World of Warcraft rolls out their content, they create seasons, and that's basically major content updates to the game is what you see when it defines a season.
So it's a new learning environment for everybody going into it.
Yep, a new update. Think of it as an update where they're giving different new features. So students have to relearn how to do things based on the changes. They have a set of different dungeons or tests that they will have to go ahead and compete in. They don't necessarily know which dungeon will be picked, but they will go ahead and do it. Each of these dungeons, it's a sprint. So think of this as they have 2 weeks to prepare, and then they have to go through these as fast as possible. And what happens is, depending on what's called a key level, you see it over here, as the key level goes up, the difficulty increases. And so that's kind of the whole functionality of the actual setup for the environment they're going into. Each of these, in addition to having the enemies that you face in the dungeon being stronger based on the key level. There's also what they call affixes. So these are extra mechanics that are thrown in that players have to adapt to, and go ahead and come up with strategies to negate or avoid or minimize the impact, the negative consequence, which in this case is adding more time to how fast they get to the end. So the other thing you see in here is they list objectives, and then they also have a bar here that shows a percentage completion. So they have to have a set amount to do it. They can do any path they want to choose to get through and navigate this this test. They can go ahead and they can grab different combinations. They can pick a lot of different, when it comes to the different players, what you're seeing is they have a wide variety of access to combinations of party members. So the next thing you have is you have a tournament realm. So what happens is players will come in, they'll get access to it to start working around the tournament realm, and then they'll have access through the finals. And it's different than what we would call a live key or a live realm, which is the realm that you play actively retail with everyone else. You have a lot of RNG, you have a lot of random, whether or not you get lucky or not, whether you get the equipment that you want. In the tournament realm, you're actually able to pick exactly all the stuff that you need to equip yourself to perform the best you can at your given role. You can also do unlimited practice runs. So this is that fail fast mentality where it's go through, try different things out, take risks, see if you can fix it and move on. Because again, the whole focus is completing this task as fast as possible. There are 5 roles. Typically, you have a tank, a healer, and then you have 3 players that are dedicated to doing damage. And then the other thing is that teams are restricted to the same faction. And what it is in World of Warcraft, there's 2 factions. There's Alliance and there's Horde. For the Horde. So there's a lot of mix here. So you're starting to see some of the complexity that's getting into here. One of the things you start looking at is players can choose from 12 different classes. Each class is an average of 3 specializations. And then 6 specializations allow healing, and then you have 6 specializations that allow tanking, and then overall there's 24 damage dealer specializations. So that means you have 2,000 different possible combinations of groups, over 12,000 permutations for those of you that like math, and also just to add a little more space, a little more flavor to it, players can choose from a total of 23 races based on with their own unique special abilities. So there's lots of things students have to process, or I should say these players have to process to gather everything together to make themselves the most efficient they can. The goal is simply complete the fastest amount of time. Does this remind anybody of something that students might do? Like, let's say if you have a deadline at Sunday at 11:59 p.m., you might see some of your students do this, that it's to complete the paper in the fastest amount of time, or the quiz in the fastest amount of time. So what does it mean? It means they have to focus on efficient route running. They have to focus on maximizing the player role performance. They have to focus on efficient communication. Rapid prototyping of strategies and execution. They really have to adopt a fail fast mentality. And really the whole thing is that you're also maximizing your group composition and utility. So these are things that you're seeing these players in this tournament have to go ahead and really do to really sort of meet the winning condition.
And the thing about it is, it's not you have to know yourself. So you have to, so there's metacognition on how you're learning, but social metacognition, all of this here is the whole team has to know how to maximize everybody's role performance. You have to know how the person you're playing with can maximize their performance. So it's not just knowing how you learn and reflecting on it, it's reflecting on how everyone else in your team learns. And this is something that we often skip over when it comes to giving out group assignments. we just feel that students, like, oh, group assignments, it's necessary because in the workforce you'll have to work with people. But we rarely go back and think about what exactly do we want them to learn. And we're foreshadowing that we think that there has to be social metacognition. Okay, Chris, go. And you'll need to go
Sure.
fast.
Okay, so this is the actual MDI format. So the thing is like I said, once they get into the tournament, they are given a specific set of keys, dungeons, I should say. Each dungeon has a set amount of affixes that they will have to go through, and they'll also get a starter key level. Typically, it's one of the higher keys, so like a +20. And then what happens is they run. So they stream this. So they're live streamed, and so you have typically 4 teams running at the same time. You can see some of them are running similar dungeons, like the 2 diagonal ones on the upper right quadrant and the lower left quadrant. They're running the same dungeon. And then you're seeing basically the teams are actually doing a head-on completion and getting points assigned based on their performance. And then there's a leaderboard. They can always be checking the leaderboard that's there. Really, they also have shoutcasters out there. So in this case, they do have it's mostly men, but there's also women who are now in shoutcasting as well for the dungeons. So they're giving commentary and talking about what strategies they're using, what techniques they're using. They're calling out highlights, they're doing different things like that, just like you would see the play-by-play announcers in any sports event. This is what you're seeing with esports. And so what you're saying is they're going ahead and they're giving a lot of this information.
Chris, can you go back just one thing? I just wanted to make a point of this. So one more slide, please. Back. Okay, so the people playing this and a whole bunch of other people who aren't necessarily competing in the dungeons, but who play this game, they are watching these live streams. As they are watching these live streams, they have to, they're reflecting on, can I do in game what I see people doing? And do I have, do I have the capability of doing what I see these top players doing? It's also, does the team I run with, when I run through these, do they have the capability of doing what I'm seeing done there? So this is a real reason why we decided to do our research here on social metacognition, so that we can really drill down about what learning strategies, what rapid prototyping and adoption can happen, and how we can take what we found here and then apply it to learning environments that are more formalized, because this is totally an informal learning environment that's not just entertainment, but is for people who want to play the game better. And there are, tens of thousands of people watching these. Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Well, exactly. And the other thing about this is all the content is standardized. So everyone has the same ability to pick the same classes, the same everything, the same equipment. Everybody has the same dungeons or tests they have to complete. And so really what it comes down to is how well they communicate with each other, how well they assess their strategies, how well they learn what is the most efficient route to run through this. And that's all the stuff that's going on during that month leading up to this contest. Next thing you see is the tools that are out there. So you have live streams. Live streams is one of the major tools that these teams are using, because I think one thing to remember, these teams have 5 members that actually play, but reality is they're typically all from the same guild or same group of people, and so they have followers, they have friends who are watching what the other teams are doing and then texting them, tweeting them, hopping into different communication channels and sharing strategies and snippets and highlights of what other teams are doing while this is going on. The other thing they have analytics. And so this is what you see various analytics as far as what their performance is as a group as they go through their test. The other piece that's there, Discord, yay!
Like
Hopefully
we
you're
have
all
Discord.
like we have. Hopefully you're in the Discord, our Discord. And basically they have different things to do. So they have logs there, they have different communications that happen there. And these are all things that allow them to go ahead and communicate effectively, both within the 5 players playing, but also crowdsourcing content from their fans and from other folks. The other piece is they have guides, and they also have, this is Mythic Dungeon Tools. This is an add-on that allows them to create maps of the specific dungeon and then to create a route and map how they want to approach this and have strategies and tactics and pick out so they hit that 100%. Because for most of these teams, getting over 100% is a waste of time. They lost time because you didn't get exactly 100%. So that's really sort of what you see here, is that focus is how fast you can go. So now we get into the learning strategies that we observe. So now when you're looking at what's going on as far as what we saw, well, number one, we saw a lot of, because this was an open call and people could all join. About 50% of the teams that showed that did these keys were just happy to be here. They're just, hey, look, we're part of this. We're part of this. We're here for the banner. Literally, there were teams called "I'm in it for the banner." Because that was also the additional in-game giveaway that the company was providing their players. The other thing is that they went to the live key. So this is where they don't have control over everything. And they practiced on live keys prior to the Dungeon Realm opening. So they familiar themselves with the test, with the navigation, with the landscape, finding different nooks and crannies and different things, different routes to play around with. The other thing they did is they crowdsourced strategies. A lot of these teams got their fans, got their friends, to go ahead and make suggestions, do critiques, have and reflected on what their current piece was. There's also a practice, which is interesting, of sandbagging early runs. So the idea was you don't give away your best strategies. You wait until it actually matters and you're near the finals. That's when you pull out all the stops and all the tricks and everything else that you've learned, or as a lot of e-casters have started calling it, they break out the tech. So this is special features that they figured out based on their combinations, what works best for them. The other thing they did is, instead of attacking all 8 keys at once, they only focused on a handful of dungeons each day and tried to do the best they could to keep getting a higher and higher level. The goal was to time 1 key for each dungeon. And then you also saw a lot of players cross-training where they played different classes that allow them more flexibility in group dynamics. Now we turn for the learning theories.
Okay, so Chris talked about some specifics, but here are some learning theories we saw. Now, one of them was the metagame. And the metagame is a term used by players to mean that the player is using knowledge procured outside regular gameplay and in-game resources. Okay, go ahead. Next slide, Chris. Okay, for video game players, this is considered a legitimate information source, and it improves player information and allows them to be part of the online communities of learning. So basically, if you were talking about this for your courses, this would be students seeking supplemental resources, supplemental readings, finding, getting tutors, finding different places where they can go ahead and do learning. Okay, next. Also what we saw, and actually for our conference sessions are based on this. If you look at our conference sections have categories. So for each of the sessions, they're based on social network knowledge construction. And Chris, you can hit the next slide. And social network knowledge construction, like you'll see next to our sessions for the conference, it says identify, lurk, contribute, create, lead. So this is some of the learning that we saw in there. We saw the higher level, the higher levels of creating and leading. And also for this push, we saw lots of people who lurked. lots of people who watched everyone else's trial runs before they did it themselves. The identify the network wasn't so much there because everyone already knew the community or the domain. So there were people who lurked, there were people who went on Twitter and the sites to contribute their thoughts on it. There were people who created, as Chris said, maps and guides. And then there were people who also took leadership roles in this. So next slide, please, Chris. So when it comes to social metacognition, this was the focus of our study. And just to remind, this is what it is. It consists of group members monitoring and controlling one another's knowledge, emotions, and actions. So this social metacognition is something we continually saw in these game players. And like we said, our research wants to extrapolate from the learning we saw there into our online learning environments. And this is an example of, and this is the example that we pulled out. So what we saw there, and this is from Ming and Wing from 2009. And again, most of the research is based on math groups. Here are the things that we saw. When it came to metacognition, if it's individual, you see self-scaffolding. You would see manage personal play experience, and then also look at the distribute the resource demand, the metacognitive demand. On the one column, it's for the individuals, and then in the other column we have is for the group. For the group, we saw reciprocal scaffolding, where the group was setting the appropriate ideas, and that the motivation was intrinsic and also can be supplied by the group. They planned and developed the scopes of searches. They evaluated information and jointly built and shared knowledge. And as a group, they expanded their understanding. Under regulating the emotion, the team members motivated each other. They distribute the risk of failure amongst each other, and they aided each other in emotional support. Now, on the metacognitive demand that was required, they divided the responsibilities. And also because of roles, there were more specialized knowledge building, but then also the knowledge of role collaboration is increased. So the reason we're really bringing this up is because we know students hate group projects. We know lots of group projects fail. And we believe that we could design them better. And we're using gamers as a way to look at how this is done on a voluntary basis and how it is done so successfully, because the people who competed in this were successful learners. Okay, Chris, go ahead, next. Okay, the other thing, and this is taken from the business literature, it's called absorptive capacity. Absorptive capacity in the business literature is an ability of a firm to recognize the value of new external information, assimilate it, and apply it for business purposes. For gamers, it's not for business purposes, it's for gaming purposes. But if students are in a team that has a high absorptive capacity, chances are they'll learn more and learn faster. And Chris, you go ahead, next slide. This absorptive capacity, this approach allows an organization's knowledge base to expand. It uses prior learning experience, a shared language, and cross-functional interfaces. Everything, all that information Chris was giving you about how these teams function, is the way that the concept of the construct of absorptive capacity works in business. So especially in business classes, in engineering classes, if you're having students do group projects, you as a designer or the instructor should be looking at how to explain this to the students. Okay, Chris, next one.
Sure. We're going to go ahead and start winding down on this. So we're going to go ahead and look at our findings. And so really what we found was best results were from teams that incorporated a unique strategy that basically they developed, as well as monitoring what other team strategies and comps were. And so this is the ability to change on the fly. Again, that absorptive capacity. We have our set goal of what we're going to do, but then we're still able to build in and change our focus as needed based if someone else comes out with a better strategy. Most teams use a similar group composition, so they limited themselves to certain classes. They had a very commonality. There's very little variation between group makeup because of the advantages that these different classes had, these different roles had. The best performing teams had multiple players that could, as you'd expect, the best teams were the most flexible. The people who could go ahead and they could manage the variables the best and had the most comfort with playing multiple different roles, multiple different play setups with a lot of different play styles. The winning team won by using a misdirect bug. So they found an error through the course of their exploration that they found that instead of, if they just had someone there, like in this case, it was the class was a hunter, who could use a talent called misdirect. And what it did is it shifts the enemy's focus from the hunter that attacked them to whoever the hunter targeted to misdirect to. They found out that misdirect had an unlimited range. So what happened is they would just place one player in an area that spawned creatures that would do damage to the players, but also enemies at the same time whenever it died. That what happens, they started misdirecting them, and they found that they constantly kept coming back up. So they had an unlimited supply of these ads to send towards their group, and so they would just misdirect there. And literally, the strategy for that player was to sit on the steps, wait for these things to spawn, shoot them, and then wait for the next thing where they next showed up, and do it again and again and again, and didn't really play the rest of it. But that's how they won the strategy. And so that's what you see here. And so, like I said, the hunter just stands here and misdirects to the party. Everything keeps running to these guys down here at another part of the dungeon. And again, it does more damage to things around. So that's what they found, a way to increase their damage.
So the future research that will probably be doing this is, basically the Kobayashi Maru, meaning change the conditions. and knowing when the conditions change. But for us as learning designers and educators, the reason we did this research was to take it out of the math literature to begin with. and just because you just don't see those high motivation levels in the math in math literature, we are gamers, and we know, and we play in a place where that is absolutely a learning environment, that it's not enough just for you to reflect on your own learning. You have to reflect on your whole team's learning, and then figure out how your team can learn the next thing that they need to, so that you can continually being successful in the game. So we took a social metacognition approach to how this happens in a game. And like I said, from our lessons learned, we think we have things that can relate back to the classroom. And some of the biggest things that I would say is the fact that build social metacognition into team projects, and I would even say start discussing it early especially in your marketing courses, your business courses, your courses where your students are going to end up in fields where they're constantly going to have to be working with people, and how successful they are is really going to depend on, can the whole team learn these things? Because I don't know if anyone else is familiar with this term. Anybody know in gaming what the term carry means? Like, carry me, or I'll be your carry, or it's okay, don't worry about it, I'll take care of things, I'll carry you. Anybody familiar with that term? Yes, Greg. One player does everything for the team's success. Yes. Okay. In team projects, there's oftentimes that one person in the team who carries everybody else, does the majority of the work, or also in that group project that they do all the like they have to do all the cognitive lifting. Like they go, okay, this is how we're going to do the project. You do this, you do this, you do this, without any, and they just try to, they just try to, through their willpower, they try to will the project. They're often called even the team leaders, instead of really reflecting as a group on who has what strength, what do we need to learn, what do we need to figure out as a team. Oftentimes group projects, they divide it up between the different students, and everything is siloed, and you get what you end up getting is the best that person can do, not the best that the team can do, but the best that one person can do, added to the best that the next person can do, to the third person who couldn't care less, that the rest of the team is going to carry for the grade. So these are the things that we want in learning design and in teaching, to start thinking about our group projects. How do we make our group projects that our students need, that really need to do? How do we make them closer to the rich kind of learning environments that we see in these kind of gaming events? And also, now I'll extrapolate a little bit more. Like I said, I supervise a learning design team. Who does what well? How fast can we learn, like how fast can we learn how ChatGPT will handle this? Right now, looking at AI, I divided it up into like Mouse is looking at the business, or Facilitator is looking at the business applications of ChatGPT. I'm doing the AI image generation. If any of you went to any of Wendy's projects, Wendy's is taking over, besides ChatGPT, what other AI is there that students can use for text writing? So we're learning about this as a group, and I can tell you, because we know each other's strengths and weaknesses, some of the decisions on who did what was based on that. So this is basically our presentation. And any questions or any comments or anything like that?
I know we actually have time. We have like 6 minutes left. I know Jennifer had talked about, like, with some of the updates that happen is, sometimes you have to relearn everything. And really what you see in these games is this continuous improvement.
How do you guarantee buy-in from students on such a niche design? Well, one, I don't think it should be niche, but that's just my opinion. And guarantee, guarantee is not a word I would use. Not a word I would use, especially since this research, we don't have 10 years of research on this. What we basically have when it comes to research on this is research that we've recently done. We haven't published it. We haven't published it yet. And as far as buy-in in students, just in general, when it comes to group projects, I would say you have to continually talk to students about the relevance of this. So I would take it out of ARC's motivational model, attention, relevance, confidence and success. I would talk about the relevance portion of this. That's how I would, but I can't tell you that I can guarantee student buy-in. Thanks, Casey. It's nice that it made sense. Any other questions or thoughts about this? And yeah, and Jennifer, yeah, I think that this is something I will tell you as a as a learning design manager, I am constantly thinking about I am constantly thinking about what my designers can learn, what can we adapt, what can we do next, and just where I am, and Mouse can probably attest to this also. We constantly have to adapt on the fly, and knowing what level the team is at and what they can handle is huge.
I'm going to jump in and first of all say thanks to Kay and Chris for hosting this session, and thanks to all of you for attending. I'm going to share a survey right there in the chat now. If you could please take a moment or two to fill that out for us. And I'm going to share personal from students' perspective what you just talked about. So a year ago, I ended up ultimately failing a class because we hit a group project and they started right before spring break. And what had happened was the instructor said, would you like to do this over spring break or do you want to wait till after? I said, I can't because I'm going to be gone and busy over spring break. The rest of my group went ahead and did it. And by the time I got back, the project was done and I was lost. And I ended up staying in school a whole extra semester because, and I'm in it now in this class, because it's only offered in the spring, because the group just took off without me and left me behind. So it's kind of a bitter taste in my mouth, and something I could have contributed to easily had they just waited that week. But
and that is something I was especially say, like in our online classes, you have a variety of students, like ones who are like, we got to get this done right away. And then there's others who are like, oh, I work or I take care of my family. When I get to do this kind of work is on the weekend. The rest of the team, if you want to work on Monday through Thursday, I can't do that. And that sounds similar to your situation.
Yeah.
And I just think in general, we throw out group projects as designers or instructors without a lot of thought about how to use them for teaching and how to show students the relevance so that they can understand that. And that's why I'm kind of hoping the social metacognition, and again, most of the research has been done in small math groups and small statistics groups, when you put students in a group and like 4 students work on the problem together, and how they learn from each other. So that's the area where the research is. Okay, then I think we're done. And thank you everyone for coming to what could be seen as a very niche topic. But you know what? I hope in 3 or 4 or 5 years, it's not a niche topic. I hope it is. I hope it's something like, well, we're designing a group project. Okay, well, we obviously have to bring the social metacognition into this. I hope that it could develop into something like that with you people here with us. Okay, then Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
And yes, Russ, there is a recording, but we'd have to, I don't know what our turnaround time will be on it.
Donna's pretty good, though. Probably be
Okay.
ready by today.